Hey, hello everyone. So welcome to our second talk of the archaeology talk series. Today we will have Dr. Kim Sammy to um, give us a talk about the industrial production in the ancient world, bronze mirrors and bells in China. So Kim Sammy is a associate professor at the Department of History and director of the new transdisciplinary program, Digital Futures and Humanities. In Hong Kong State University, he obtains his BA degree in translation and MPhil degree in East Asian Studies from the Chinese University of Hong Kong. In Princeton University, he was awarded a PhD degree in art and archaeology. And his interest in the history of mass production in the ancient world and his attempt to study industrial arts with the assistance of science and technology. For those who join online, you can leave your question in the Q&A chat box, and after this talk, we will have 15 to 20 minutes for questions. So now I will let Dr. Liu to begin to talk.
Thank you, Ying Tong. All right, and thank you, everyone. So nice to meet all of you here. Please call me Sammy. Well, I would just like to sit down and then to talk to all of you. But if you can't see me, all right, because I have to demonstrate, or like not only with the PowerPoint, but also with my hands, all right. Because today will be kind of like a virtual hands-on, all right, presentation, because I have to use my hands to explain a lot of this, like a very complicated production technologies or production techniques of handling the clay molds, clay models, and bronzes. All right. So let's begin. All right. So today, well, thank you, thanks Ying Tong for a nice introduction. I will talk about the samples. All right. I will talk about today. Well, they would include mainly bronze mirrors. All right. Mirrors made of bronze, and then the last part will be covering slightly bells. All right. Bells made of bronze as well. So these are my major sample, or data sets or like a sample sets. The theme that I would like to argue with is that they are produced in an industrial scale, or there will be an industrial revolution in around 500 BCE in China. Right? So that's the point I want to like argue with. But the main question that I want to ask is, how were they produced? Right? That would be the main question throughout my presentation. All right? How were they produced? This is a simple question, but it begs also for a lot of complicated procedures that we have to explore. If we are talk about industrial production, and we are talk about replication and the pursuit of efficiency. Right? I will talk about a lot of replication. So replication, replicated from clay models, replicated from clay molds, and replicated from existing bronzes. So this will be the replication, all right? So there will be lots of replication, transfers between models and molds, and transfers between bronzes and the molds and models, all right? So a lot of transfers and a lot of replication, because we are talking about industrial production, all right? And I will argue that they will be pursuing for efficiency. The concern of efficiency would be lingering throughout the entire industrial operation, all right, between all of these bronze mirrors and also bronze bells. Quiz time. All right, as the quiz that you've been doing throughout your childhood, please spend 10 seconds, all right, due to a time limit, look for the differences. Look for the differences between these two bronze mirrors. It's time. And then you tell me, what are the differences between them? Could you please show the middle? The middle. Yeah. Which part? This part with me?
I mean,
the middle.
Yeah, the north part.
This one? Yes. The north? All right. Do you think that they are different? How different are they? Could you please describe?
I think color.
The color.
Yeah.
The color different?
It's the left is dark and yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, the color could be different, but that could be due to the corrosion of the bronzes. All right. So the corrosion will bring to the changes of the color of the bronze. Any other differences? Yes.
The one on the left has much sharper workmanship, sharper folds.
Uh-huh. Sharper? You mean that their decorative patterns will be sharper? Clearer?
I think the cutting is sharper, so they might have a higher technology or better tools, stronger tools to do the cutting.
Okay. But let me tell you, they are all cast.
They're all
All right. They are all cast with one tool.
casts.
All right. Yes.
Yeah,
They are not
some
done by
casts,
casting.
right,
Cutting.
sometimes you have casts that are worn,
Uh-huh.
and the product coming out will have more sort of scraggy edges.
Uh-huh.
So
That would.
yeah.
That would have to do with the precision of the formula of the molten bronze. All right. The composition of the molten bronze. So, for example, if you have higher proportion of tin, that may make the decorative pattern look a little bit sharper, or that's the term, or clearer. All right. So that would be. But if you only focus on the motifs, the patterns, the decorative patterns, do you find any differences between them? Due to the time limit, all right, because I only have like 30 minutes, all right?
And it's not large enough.
Not large enough. Please come over, all right? Come over here and look at here, all right? Because we have a big screen here, all right? It's good. Thank you, Ying Dong, for the equipment. To my eye, all right? I don't see there. I think they would be identical. Identical in the sense that I think their patterns, the decorative patterns, are the same. Let me show you. All right. Here you see kind of like a diamond-shaped leaf. All right. Here you also see that the same thing. All right. Just next to it, you see some granules or some dots here, right? And then you move here. All right. Around the same position, you also see a lot of granules or dots here, right? All right. You see that? You're with me. All right. If you move around, you see a little bit kind of like curls here. Move around, right? Corresponding the same position, you see also the curves here. All right. The slanting T, all right, is obvious. All right. If you do this minute comparison between these two mirrors only, all right, and you can tell that their decorative patterns will be the same, and that would suggest that they would have come from the same decorated model. And that's the term I would use it to describe them. They look identical, right? Identical as if they are sharing the same decorated model, right? So bear this in mind. Let me introduce a little bit the background information of the mirrors, all right? So usually a mirror is to reflect things, all right? Reflect images, all right? So you see that this smooth part, smooth side is to reflect images. But we are primarily interested in the back of the mirror. So this is the back of a mirror. All right, we're interested in the decoration, the decorative pattern on the back of these mirrors. Okay, so and these decorative patterns on the back of the mirrors usually show a lot of interesting messages. For the smooth reflective side, all right, so I will just kind of skip for this presentation. So you see that how people would have been looking into the mirrors, and then the mirrors will be reflecting images. So this will be the smooth reflective part. But for my presentation today, I will focus on the back decoration. So as we just compare them, all right, these two mirrors come from Changsha, all right, in Hunan province, dating to about 300 BCE. All right, I would say they are identical mirrors. The diameter, 11 centimeters, 11 centimeters. The size is the same, right? Dimension is the same. Then decorative patterns, the same, all right? Corrosion, all right, as Li Lao just kind of pointed out, corrosion may bring to the differences in color, all right? But that's corrosion, right? That's later, that's afterwards. when they were freshly cast, all right, they would have been identical. All right, so that's how I say they came from the same decorated decor model. If they come from the same decorated model, for example, imagine this is a decorated model, so you replicate molds from these models. All right, so a model is in positive, all right, looks positive, looks exactly like the finished bronze mirrors. A mold is in negative, right, model and mold. So you pack clay upon the model, all right, you will produce a mold because you pack clay upon it, so it absorbs all the decorated patterns, so it's mirror reverse, so it's in negative. As long as you have the decorated model, all right, it doesn't break, it doesn't deform, you can pack clay upon the model multiple times, and you will have multiple identical molds. With me, right? Right? All understand? So that's how I say identical molds. Right? You can produce identical molds from a single decorated model. All right? So you can use this identical molds for maybe further replication or for casting. Right? You can use the identical molds for casting. So with identical molds, you can produce identical mirrors. So that's how these two mirrors would have come from two identical molds from the same identical model. So we have to be clear with all these concepts, all right? So if you don't understand, all right, raise your hand. All right, I can explain a little bit. But if you do, I assume, then we'll go ahead. All right, so we can try with a little bit some kind of like image technologies that I have to ask you like in the future, all right? So we can play a little bit with this image technology. For example, we can turn the mirror into X-ray photo-like images and superimpose them all together. Line them to see if there's any misfit, misalignment, all right? So if there's any misalignment, that means they are not identical, all right? The positioning, the spatial, all right, alignment are not identical. But if they do, all right, that means they will be identical. So ready to superimpose. That's how it looks like. All right, no misalignment, no mismatch. What if we turn them into different colors? Red and blue becomes purple, right? Yeah. All right. So for those big slanting T's in Chinese, we may call them shan characters. So you see that these parts are usually empty because there's no misalignment there. If there's misalignment, they will intrude, all right, interfere, and then there's no, all right, clear images like this, all right? So clear with this. And then we'll look at a little bit at the molds, all right? Model and mold, all right? So we are now looking at the mold. This is what we call the bivalve mirror mold. Usually these mirrors would have come from this bivalve mold. So bivalve mold, that means one part of the mold, right, this side, this part, is for casting the smooth refractive side of the mirror, okay? And other part, this part, is for casting the decorative pattern at the back of a mirror. So you see a lot of this negative decorative pattern, all right, on this part, right? So when you assemble these bivalve mold pieces all together, so you form a complete mirror mold. And you pour molten bronze into it, and when the molten bronze solidify, okay, you break the mold and you obtain a bronze mirror, right? Usually, a lot of these molds were made of clay. So when the molten bronze solidify, all right, and it will absorb all the kind of pattern from the clay molds, usually the clay mold is not reusable. Stone molds, they may be reusable. Right? Metal molds, they may be reusable. But for clay molds, usually they are not reusable. Especially if these clay molds bear complicated decorative patterns like this, all right, they are usually not reusable. So don't just kind of think that, all right, one mold, I can use one mold and then produce a lot of identical, multiple identical mirrors. That's not doable. But you can replicate identical molds from the same single decorated model, all right? Produce a lot of identical molds for casting, and then you can produce a lot of identical mirrors, okay? So this is also an important concept to bear in mind. Do we find any evidence, any other evidence of these identical mirrors or molds? Yes, we do. This is a site called Houma in Shanxi province, all right? Also spend 5 seconds, all right? Compare the differences to see if there's any difference between these 3 molds. But unfortunately, these are fragmentary molds, all right? Because they have been destroyed, all right? Been damaged. But if you compare, for example, this is a deer-like motif. I crop it out. This is another deer-like motif. I crop it out. You can compare the granules, the positioning, all right? And you have to believe me that the 3 molds would have been identical, all right? If you can't see it, come closer and you will see it, all right? So with these 3 identical molds, I can prove that they would have come from the same single decorated model, okay? So not just in theory, but also in practice, in reality, that these identical molds, identical mirrors would have definitely existed. The problem is previous generation scholars have not devoted energy or efforts to look for them. If you don't bear this agenda in mind, if you don't look for them, they don't exist. But if we bear this agenda in mind, we start looking for them, we find groups and groups of identical mirrors, identical molds. All right, we find this. So that's the theory so far. All right, we have the decorated model, and we can produce molds. All right, we can produce identical mirrors. And these mirrors, 500 to 300 BCE, they were just distributed all over East Asia, not just in China, also all the way extending to Mongolia, to Korea a little bit, to Kazakhstan, to the Altai mountain area. All right, I'll talk about them a little bit, and this is the background information. Why do I say they are industrially produced or industrially operated? Because this is an important principle, production principle that differs from previous generation. In previous generation, for example, before 500 BCE, these identical bronzes did not exist at all. Did not exist. If they have one model, they will use one model to produce one single bronze item only. That's it. You want to replicate things from it? No, not at all. That's it. One model for only one bronze. But what I just was talking about in the past 10 minutes is one model for multiple, several identical mirrors. That means replication existed after 500 BCE all the way to 300 BCE. But before 500 BCE, for example, in the Shang Dynasty, one model for one single bronze only, and that's it, for unknown reasons. Maybe for sacrificial reason, for religious reason, we don't know so far, but one model for only one bronze product. For example, in this article, all right, by Yue Hongbin and Yue Zhanwei scholars, all right, so they are arguing that, all right, although the shape of this bronze bull, all right, they will be highly similar, but detailed decorative patterns still displayed minute differences. Wow, that's interesting. All right, why didn't they use one model to replicate? Well, then we touch upon the section mold casting method. Well, this is a well-known concept, like in ancient Chinese bronze studies. All right. For example, to cast this bronze vessel, all right, we produce a one bronze, the model, all right, made of clay. Because the model looks exactly the same with the finished bronze vessel, all right. So this is the bronze model. So we pack clay upon this model, we form a mold, right? And then we slice the mold into sections. Slice them into sections. For example, here, 1, 2, 3 sections. So we call them a mold sections, a section mold. All right. So we slice them and then we remove the model. we put it aside. And then we reassemble these 3 mold sections. So what's inside is empty, right? You pour molten bronze into the empty space until it's solidified, all right? You obtain a bronze vessel like this. If you doesn't want it to be a solid trunk, you insert the core, all right? So if you don't insert this clay core into it, it'll become a solid trunk. It's not a container. It becomes solid trunk, all right? Very chunky, very heavy. But you insert it, all right, and remove the model, reassemble the mold section, you make this, all right? So this is the section mold casting method. With this section mold casting, in theory, as long as the model doesn't break, doesn't deform, doesn't got damaged, you can use a model to replicate. However, the Shang Dynasty artisans did not do it at all. All right, here are the rubbings shown in Yue and Yue's article. All right, so this is a rubbing. We have to do a lot of like a detailed comparison. All right, the ideal case would be to put these bronze vessels on the same table, one by one, compare them one by rotate them one bit by bit. All right, this would be the ideal case. But I haven't like assessed these bronze vessels yet, so we have to rely on their observation. And their observation is that the shape is very similar, but the decorative patterns still differ. All right, so for example, in this part, all right, you see the curve here, all right, the curve here, but it was inside, all right, you see two curves, or only one curve, only one spiral, right? You see it? 2 spirals here. So these are the minute differences observed by Yue and Yue, all right? So the principle for the Shang Dynasty is 1 model for 1 bronze only. Somehow, after several hundred years, to 500 to 300 BCE, and suddenly replication occurred. And so that's the phenomenon we have to look into. And that's the industrial production phenomenon I am arguing about. But if you think that, well, replication from the model, and then you produce several or multiple identical bronzes, that's too simple. The 300 BCE bronze mirror producers were not thinking in these terms only. They have a bigger picture in mind. What's the bigger picture? Well, to look for evidence from these bronze mirrors. Keep looking at them, all right? Keep exploring. That's the bigger picture hidden behind these mirrors. Not just replicating from the single model. Not just it. This is only one of the multiple stages. They have a bigger picture. What's the bigger picture? This is the part I'm going to argue about. They will start from a component model, very, very small, all right? 1.6 centimeters wide, like this big, 2.6 centimeters long, all right? Right? Very small, like this, like a chip. And then from the component model, they produce a component mold from the component model. Well, with the mold, same size, all right? You can produce 9 component models altogether and tile them in this fashion. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Tile them in this fashion and makes a pet model. A pet model is larger, all right, easier to handle. With this pet model, they produce a pet mold. With a pet mold, they keep producing it, producing more pet models. So you have multiple pet models, and then tile them in this fashion, like an exponential growth, right? That's the part we are looking for in the stock market tomorrow, all right? But they just replicate, starting from the component model, like this, small, and then replicate into this part. And then, because mirrors are usually circular, they just trim it, cut it, and make the circular shape. Well, then you have to ask me, why Sammy Lee? Maybe this is just your theory. Where can I look for the evidence? We have to all based on evidence, all right? How can you argue that this would have been the case that the bronze mirror will produce work in this way, right? By cutting it into this way? theory again. They did a lot of replication with multiple transfers between models and modes, component model and mode, head models and modes, background models and modes, and to decor models and modes until modes for casting. I'm already excluding those firing, casting, polishing. They're not the focus here. Because if you've got a big workshop or big factory, there will be someone in charge of like firing or in charge of the kiln or in charge of the furnace. Or I'm not talking about those parts already. I'm only focusing on making the models and making the molds for casting. Only a small section of the bronze casting or bronze production process. All right, and I have to argue that they are producing large numbers. They have very intelligent and sophisticated division of labor. They even form an assembly line in pursuit of efficiency. And so that would be the chart that I'm drafting. So starting from this single component model, and they would produce a lot of these things. This chart may look complicated, but let's look at the evidence. This is the mirror that I'm talking about. One small component model, replicate more, and then in a circular fashion, trim it, cut it, and you produce this one. All right? Looks exactly the same. This is a mirror, also dating to 300 BCE from Changsha, Deya mirror, all right, Deya Cun. So this is the rubbing of this mirror. So for example, if you look at this mirror, if you only look at this single mirror, and maybe you have to argue that, all right, they just produce a mold and then use a stamp that looks like this, the rectangular component mold, and then stamp on the mold, for example, 60 times, all right, you can produce a mold like this. This is a very intuitive thought. But if we look at more mirrors, and we've just found out that that's not the case. If you're doing stamping, all right, stamping will just squeeze out the clay. The clay may intrude into other parts. For example, stamping this part, the clay will intrude the already stamped, already impressed part. All right, but on this mirror, we found none. All right, so stamping is intuitive, but not the case here because of the big picture I'm talking about. So detailed comparison. All right. So this is the mirror, all right? So I can divide it into 10 rows here, and then also another 6 horizontal rows here, all right? And then I just crop this part. This is the bigger enlarged section, all right? If you can't see them, come closer because you have to really look into the details. For example, look at this part, the central part is only 1 centimeter, all right? Very, very small. Look at the granules inside. So this is the enlarged section. Look at the granules. Granules, all right? This is like our fingerprint, suggesting that they are replicating a lot of these identical component models, very small. Why am I saying that? You see, 1, 2, 3, 3 granules here, right? 1, 2, 3, 3 granules. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See them, right? Agree? So these are the parts, all right? These are the parts also sticking with the other parts. But within the central area, we see this 18 granules. 18 granules. No problem at all. They are the fingerprint. All right, suggesting that these component models are the same. And then we can give the names to individual components, all right, individual parts. Remember, this is only within this area, all right? Very, very small. But they are executing so many minute details onto this very, very small area already, doing all the replication. If you will tell me that you have to do this all 60 times, all right, differently, well, that would be huge work by spending years. But replication would have saved your time and energy. So granules, right? Granules, and all the parts. Thing, this wing-like thing, all right? You can do comparison. But if you are careful enough, see that those granules, they seem to be tilting downwards, right? Tilting downwards. this part seems to be tilting upwards, right? See that? What about rotate them 180 degrees? See that? This one rotated. All the same. Well, what's the point of like proving them they are identical? Because I have to prove that each single component model is the same, and then I have to look for the pet models, evidence of suggesting the pet models. All right, so same, right? Same, right? All right, this part you have to rotate it. If you should remember, rotate it, the same, right? Okay, we keep look for more evidence. We just find them. All right, this row tilting this side, this one tilting this side, upward, downward, upward, downward. Just use different colors to mark them out. And then I try many methods. All right, for example, I tried, all right, 2 by 2, all right, 3 by 3, 4 by 4, 4 by 3, this different combination. And then I just find out that after all these trials and errors, 3 by 3 would be very ideal. And if we just cut them into this way, and then also make them into pet models, all right, by separating them, and remember to rotate them, rotate it, all right, they would just look the same. So up, down, up, up, down, up, all the way the same, orientation all the same. And there's only also one empty band here, empty band here, empty band here. You see that? Empty band here, empty band. This part missing, this part also missing because it's out of the mirror. So with all these detailed comparisons, I can show you that the existence of pet models, all right, is valid. It did exist on this mirror, right? 3 by 3 combination. So I can prove this part. I can also prove this part. And you see the mirror that looks like this, right? Here I'm just kind of like analyzing it. The component model, very small, like the chips. But this is a 1974 Motorola microprocessor, all right? But this is the chip, all right? And I'm arguing that the industrial production level of this, similar to that one, all right? 500 or 300 BCE. Although absolute scale, we cannot compare absolute scale. We can compare the relative scale, right? Absolute scale, all right? There's no point to like kind of compare absolute scale. For example, we say 2024, this year, we are doing industrial production. But what about people 2,000 years later thinking about 2024 CE, all right? What about the industrial level at this moment? They will think that we are backward, we are primitive 2,000 years later, all right? Now, 2024, we are comparing to 2,300 years ago, all right? We thought that they were primitive and backward. No, that's not the point. We are not doing absolute scale comparison, all right? Relative scale. But relative scale, they are already pursuing for efficiency, replication, multiple transfers, all right? A lot of replication, and then different combination, different assembly of the components, assembling all of these components. So I just show you this mirror, these two mirrors. This mirror and these two mirrors will be sharing the same small component model. Okay, and then sharing the 3 by 3 pet model. But you remember that, right? Easy. There's no other main motifs on top of it. But here, you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 slanting T or shine character on top of it, sitting on top of the background. So if you think this is the background pattern, you see the background pattern here, but on top of the background pattern, you still see 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 slanting T. That means from this background pattern, they can produce a background model and background mode from this background model, they can keep replicate the background models. And then for this replicated multiple background model, they can put main motifs component onto these models. Wow. Lots of stages, lots of replication, lots of transfers, and lots of addition, and lots of mix and match. And that's the point I'm arguing about. Mix and match. Mixing and matching all of these small components, like a chip that we use on the computers nowadays. And another, what I call it, a sustainability development in industrial operation. Why am I saying that? Because I found evidence that they are saving materials. For those, if you should remember, a mirror is circular, you have to cut the circular shape. And then what about those abandoned parts, abandoned portions? Did you just toss that out of the window? No, this is industrial production. Everything is valuable. Everything is valuable. You just don't throw them into the trash bin. You keep them, you save them, and use them on other mirrors. This is a mirror, all right? Also enlarging it to this part, right here. Okay, here. This is the enlarged section. You recognize this wing? You recognize this wing, right? And here, you find this wing here. It's been cut. That means another component model has been cut, and those cut area was used on another mirror. Wow, sustainability development, saving materials, saving the waste. They are not wasting anything at all. Everything was planned, pre-planned, sophistically planned. And this is the component model from different mirrors because they've been overlaid by other main motifs. So I have to cut them out. So that's how they look in like different shape. But if you reckon those granules, they're actually the same thing. Right? So that's the theory that I just proved. These are the kind of like the multiple mirrors, although I didn't find the identical neighbors yet. This is just my theory. But you recognize these mirrors, all right? And then that's the chart I just showed, all right? Very complicated, but you see, starting from the single component model, we can underwent lots of different stages and then produce these mirrors. If we are talking about industrial production, of course, they are not only talking about one group of mirrors. That's a waste. If you only want producing one group using this method. Once the assembly line started, you cannot stop. So we found multiple groups of identical mirrors produced with similar method, but different visual effect, different mix and match. You see, these are the jaggeds. These are the jaggeds, all right, jaggeds. This is another group of identical mirrors using very similar method. Another group of identical mirrors, all right? But if you don't pay attention to them, all right, they just look very, very similar because mixing and matching, all right? Mixing all the similar thing, identical thing, highly similar thing, different things, all right? There are lots of combination. And that's the theory I'm proposing, all right? From component modes to all the way to modes forecasting, it underwent lots of replication, multiple transfers, producing large numbers, intelligent and sophisticated division of labor. One person, I don't know how many persons were involved because we don't have the exact textual records proving it, but we found from this material evidence that indeed, this is a very, very sophisticated division of labor, all right? Some guy in charge of producing, carving from this small area, all right, like designing the chip, all right, from the blueprint, and then only with this big, and then replication, forming, mixing, and matching. They're pursuing for efficiency and also saving materials. And these are what I call the industrial concern. They have industrial concern, and they did put it into practice. what would be the result of the industrial output? This is a mirror from Xi'an. Sorry. This is a mirror from Xi'an. This is a mirror from Jilin. This is a mirror from Hami, right, where we eat the Hami melon, Xinjiang, right? This is a mirror from Pacific in Altai mountain area in today's Russia. So we remember that originally they don't look similar, but we have to rotate them to the same orientation. Always remember that, bear this agenda in mind. Rotating them to the same orientation, we find this fingerprint granules, very clear, granules, all right, everywhere. All right, so with this, we found on this map, all the mirrors that I shown are from Changsha, all right, but this is Pacific. So thousands of miles from each other. And with this fingerprint granules, we can prove that they are sharing the same component model as if they're sharing the same chip. So this is similar to the production of, for example, smartphones or cell phones today, designing the smartphones in California, and then having it produced in Henan in China, or produced in Vietnam or India. And then 2,000 years later, we found they are using the same chips in India, in Mongolia, in China, and in California. Later, all right, 300 BCE later, to the Han Dynasty, all right, about like 100, 200 CE, we found mirrors produced with this similar method, covering entire East Asia, to Korea, to Japan, to the east, to the west, and all the way to the Caspian Sea. Caspian Sea, this part. Well, if we understand the industrial concern and the industrial capacity, ability, this is no surprise at all. All the way to the Tang Dynasty, all right, 800th century. These are two identical mirrors from LACMA, Los Angeles County Museum of Art. See that? Identical mirrors. 18th century, Qing Dynasty, identical mirrors. Same characters, if you can read Chinese, same character. So with this method, all right, we can trace, all right, 300 BCE all the way to the roots to 500 BCE. We did find mirrors, all right, identical mirror, although they are not using exactly the same method, but we found that they are identical. 500 BCE from Shanxi, Shanxi, and Sichuan. All right, already they are laying the industrial foundation for the 300 BCE mirror producers. And then 500 BCE, we found a lot of these bronze bells. All right, you see, wow, lots of bronze bells. How did they produce it? How did they produce bells that share the same shape, same decorative patterns, and also same sound or same two sounds? We know that ancient Chinese bells are different from the rest of the world. The rest of the world, one bell produces only one absolute pitch. Right? But for ancient Chinese bells, one bell, given its almond shape profile, cross section, one bell produces two different absolute pitches. How are they going to do that? Replication, right? Industrial concern, all right? Mixing and matching. We can also do it with like this 3D model superimposition comparison for the mirror, because they are flat objects, more like two-dimensional objects, all right? But for bronze bells, they are three-dimensional, all right? Very obvious. But we have to 3D scan them into 3D models and then superimpose one 3D model of a mirror of a bell into the 3D model of another bell, all right, to see whether they share the same model and whether their modes for casting are the same and whether they share the same core, the core for inserting into the model, right? Otherwise, it's not a bell. It's a solid chunk of points, right? It cannot generate any sound, right? It's hollow inside, then it can generate sound, all right? Then let me summarize my presentation with Henry Ford, all right, the founder of the Ford automobile. As commonly employed, It is made to refer to quantity produced, but its primary reference is to method, not just quantity. Mass production is not merely quantity production, nor is it merely machine production. Mass production is the focusing upon a manufacturing project of the principles of power, accuracy, economy, system, continuity, and speed. So not only about machine, not only about using the robots on the assembly line, all right, and that's the industrial production, all right, and I'm just kind of arguing that 2,000 years later, right, 4,000 CE, those industrial producers will be thinking us nowadays are very primitive and backward. So I use bronze mirrors, bronze bells, and then to prove it, they are industrially produced. There will be a revolution from the one model for one bronze before 500 BC and to after 500 BC, 300 BC, one model, right? Multiple bronzes. And there are lots of stages. Industrial concern, they would be pursuing for efficiency, did lots of replication. And the outcome, industrial outcome will be that replication, they are using these manufactured objects to conquer the entire land, the entire territory. And we know that after 300 BC, that will be the Qin, that will be the Han Empire. Empires would be built upon on this manufactured, industrially manufactured objects. That's my presentation today. Thank you for listening, and you're welcome. Your questions are very nice.
Very interesting. We don't have any questions online yet. So, do any of you have any questions about the presentation?
Thank you so much. So the examples that you described, are you mostly looking online to compare different mirrors in even across collections, or are you working with specific museum collections?
Working with specific museums. All right, you see a lot of these mirrors that I chose, they are from Changshan Museum in Hunan Province. All right, but I have to travel a lot.
Yeah.
Well, to complete my book that's to be published soon by University of Washington Press, I say in the preface that I travel to 40 different cities in order to access these identical mirrors. And these identical mirrors, they would not be only deposited in only one single location. Because, well, if you are a mirror owner, would you own 2 identical mirrors? Usually, no, right? If I own this bottle, I wouldn't prefer buying the same bottle again, all right? I would prefer maybe another color, maybe Ying Tong's bottle, maybe another bottle, all right? If I have the mirror, all right, mirror owner usually didn't only prefer to buy 2 identical mirrors. So a lot of these mirrors, all right, after 2,000 years, they are just scattered all around the world. So that's why I'm showing the world atlas for your visual reference, all right? Because one mirror, all right, may be found in Changsha, and then maybe found in Pacific, and then 2,000 years, another one may be found in London. All right, so they are just kind of dispersed all around the world. So that's why I'm saying that I have to travel to different cities and to look for these identical mirrors. So the agenda, all right, so it all goes back to whether you have that question in your mind, all right? If you're looking for these identical mirrors, and then you have that vision, and you start looking for them, they are actually everywhere in the world. But if you don't have that question in mind, and then they are just sitting in the museums, and nobody pays attention to that, and then they just look similar, right? Mirrors are still easy to look for because they are more like a 2-dimensional flattened objects, right? You can still look at one image of one mirror on the catalog and compare it with another catalog from another museum. You can still do it, like what I did at the very beginning of the talk. But what about 3-dimensional objects? Bronze bells, all right? So you cannot imagine it. You cannot use AI to help you because how are you going to know the rest of the shape of that bronze bell based on one 2-dimensional photograph, all right? It's only guessing. And you have to access the real object and 3D scan it and obtain the most comprehensive data you can at this moment. So three-dimensional object, that will be a very complicated long-term object in the future.
Thank you for a very cooperative talk. Learned a lot. And I'm just wondering whether any sort of original, sort of the grandfather of the design has ever been found. And also, just wondering how you make the leap between an artistic product, right? Somebody creative comes along, makes something really beautiful, and other people decide, oh, this could be the grandfather of many other designs. So what is the process of that between the individual or the the artist original creation, and then you jump into a assembly line?
Well, in order to answer your first question, the grandfathers of these designs, so we have to do the typological studies, all right? Put them one by one, all right? For example, let me show you. Oh, stop. So for example, this would be the 500 BCE bronze mirror designs at this point, and then later that will be 300 BCE mirror designs, all right? So we have to look, for example, by extracting, like for example, comparing the entire shape, entire design scheme, and then also compare the individual motive, and then to put them side by side for comparison. And then we have to deduce, all right? Some with clear chronological order, and then we can put them one by one for deduction, right? Some without clear chronological order, and then we have to speculate, okay? And then after this comparison, all right, a typological comparison, and we just try to find out the artistic origins of these designs. So then we have to decide whether they would be sharing, how much like a similarity there will be like a sharing. And then we have to go into the detail, like case by case studies of this design. All right. So for example, if we look at this tiger, and then later designers will be adopting a similar design, there will be like some parts that was resembling a part of the tiger design. All right. So that would be the approach of in typological studies we are adopting, and then to find out the grandfathers. All right. And one more indicator would be to look for the technical origins. All right, artistic origins always comes from with technical origins. All right, so for example, this replication, and then we have to look for the origins of this like techniques, and then we will find out, oh, this one, all right, maybe supposedly the grandfather, all right, is adopting replication, all right, and he's the earliest one. All right, and then later we have multiple like diverse replication practices. And we have to deduce maybe they come from that single like a father, all right, for the technical origin of replication. And then bivalve mode, all right, bivalve mode is another technological indicator, all right, whether they were using bivalve mode or an open mode, all right, open mode that's only for casting the back decoration, but no the upper part, all right, for casting the reflected side, all right, that would be also the grandfather, all right, maybe like a distant ancestor, okay. So these technical origins have to combine with artistic origins in order to find out the lineage, all right, of this design. But sometimes this lineage may just got disrupted, so it always happens, and yeah, we have to discuss like a case by case. Okay, and then your second question will be the jumping the leap, all right? So for example, in my presentation, I don't think I am like having a giant leap, because in every stage, and I found evidence for proving how it works in that particular stage. Okay, so I don't think that's like a giant leap, but if you're talking about the technological leap, for example, in Shang Dynasty, one model for only one single bronze, all right? And then after 500 BCE, one model for multiple bronze mirrors like this, Okay, and then 300 BCE, one model derived or generated different models and then different stages. So I'm also here delineating a lineage of these techniques. Okay, so there's actually no big leap, all right, or kind of jumping forward. But you can say, all right, that would be a revolution at about like 500 BC in terms of people's mindset, right, mentality, because one model for one bronze, all right, that's a very kind of old principle. And then suddenly, one model, multiple bronzes, and you can say this is a revolution in terms of mentality, all right? And then 300 BC, they're following that mentality, but complicating the production stages, all right? One stage, two stage, or three, several stages. So we can find this kind of like the missing link, and then we have to fill in the missing link, right? Usually, if we have like some kind of like a discovery, we have to find whether there's any major missing links, or if the missing links are too big, people will debate and question about it. The famous theory will be human beings out of Africa. All right. So someone arguing that people out of Africa and out of Africa for the second time. All right, that would be one theory. And then another group of people will be arguing that, all right, human beings would have been like having multiple origins, all right, in multiple continents all over the world. That's another camp. All right. Why are they arguing that, and why it hasn't become an academic consensus yet? Because there are too many missing links. All right, there are too many missing links for us to fill. All right, if these missing links are too many or too large, too significant, right? People will keep arguing about it, and it hasn't become a consensus yet. So I think for my theory, all right, we have to look for this missing link, and then so far I think that one model, one model, one bronze, one model, all right, several bronzes, all right, and then one model, different models, and then lots of different bronze mirrors, and I'm trying to fill out the missing links. All right, so I hope I'm not like really jumping too far, and then in order to reach the conclusion. Right.
I wonder
Yes.
if you can think, like, you think chronologically, right? So in Changsha, this is happening from 5,000 bridges. But the process, the change could actually be also geographical.
Mhm.
So you will have one production model here, and then it could go to Persia and then become another model and come back to China and become a model. So maybe you could think not just chronological, but also spatial.
Exactly. Yes. So not to Persia that far yet. All right, in 300 BCE, all right, 2,300 years ago. But I'm not only arguing about Changsha only.
Yeah.
So you see, I'm quoting from Xi'an, Jilin, and Pacific, and Hami, all right, where we can eat the Hami melons. Think about the chips, all right? Think about the chips. Chips would be designed in California, but what about outsourcing of the design of the chips? All right, engineers in California, maybe they are not only like staying in California, they may be all around the world. All right, sending emails or sending blueprints or exchanging information, exchanging ideas, and then it's not only limited to California, and then not to mention about actual production in China, in Vietnam, in India, all over the world as well. So I'm using like the chip as an example to compare with mirrors. So for example, the component model is only this big, all right, 1.6 centimeters, all right, only this big, all right, and then pet model like baby this big, all right, and then background models bigger, all right. These things can travel like chips, very small. These things can travel, and these things, if they are just made of clay, all right, or made of other material, they were portable. And in China, not just in Changsha, they would travel to different cities and then refurbish, right, the production capacities of other industrial production centers in China. So that's why I'm thinking that maybe after several hundred years, why the mirrors in Han Dynasty, they will be massively distributing all the way to the Caspian Sea, and then to later in Tang Dynasty, they didn't reach Persia. Oh, okay. So why would they do it? Maybe the exchanging of this component. And that's why I'm saying that they are assembling the component as long as you have the components. If you have the components, all right, you can make anything, everything, all right, all the way to Korea, to Japan, to Mongolia, to the Caspian Sea. So that's why I'm thinking maybe another object. No, maybe my future project would be to look into the relationship between empires and these manufactured objects, right? Because these objects can travel, these components can travel, right? The more distant they travel to, the bigger the power of the empire is. That would be what I call it industrial power or manufacturing power. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. That's a very fascinating topic. But for your answer, so it seems to suggest that many of these mirrors were produced locally by the transportation of modes or models. But I wonder if also possible that they are basically transferred by long-distance trade, where one stop from another, one by one until the, let's say, Central Asia. Because yes, I think Japan will also sort of try to replicate the Chinese bronze mirror in the from the first century onward. But the result of such sort of replication or imitation are usually different from the sort of originally imported bronze mirror from the Chinese empires. So, do you have any more sort of direct evidence suggesting the sort of local production of these bronze mirrors? That's the first question. And second, you mentioned that there's a very convincing show that there's a revolution, probably from the 5th century onward, sort of. So, what's the motivation behind such a sort of chemical shift? Why would the artists all of a sudden decided to produce the multiple vessels by using the same model or mold? Yes. Do you have any ideas about this?
Okay, yeah, thank you for your two questions. For your question one, I hope I didn't say it, they are produced locally, purely or solely or only. All right, I would make it clear that they could be produced locally, or they could also travel, all right, or they could be also produced from one single center. All right, I am not eliminating all the other possibilities, because this possibility could also survive, all right, could also exist, all right, with this chips or component models, all right, if they can travel, they can definitely be produced locally. And if about the Apple company, all right, keeps the chip, all right, only in California, all right, only in the Silicon Valley, all right, it could be also possible, all right. We are not even eliminating all the other possibilities, right? So, and actually, we cannot do it, right? We don't have enough evidence suggesting this. So I should be saying that this could be produced locally, or could be produced only from one single center. It could be also possible. But the evidence we are seeing nowadays is that all across East Asia, we see a lot of these identical mirrors. And well, there could be different possibilities. These mirrors, identical mirror, where we have to acknowledge that they are identical because they are sharing the same component model, right? Sharing the same chip, all right? So they would be related somehow. How were they related? Maybe from the same single production center, or single center distributing the chips, the component chips to different places, right? Maybe, we don't know yet, but somehow, technically, they are related because they're sharing the same component model, and some sharing the same pet models or background models, right? But some didn't share the same pet model, some didn't share the same background models, right? This all the mirrors that I found, but I didn't show them today, right? They all exist. So there are too many possibilities for here. So, and I have to acknowledge that we don't have enough evidence to suggest a firm answer for this kind of question yet. For your another question,
Motivation behind the
motivation, all right? Motivation, yes, that the motivation would be a very interesting question to ask, especially we have some clear, a relative clear chronological order, especially 500 BCE, all right, none. And then 500 BCE later, all right, suddenly, all right, replication becomes everywhere, omnipresent, all right? Definitely there will be something going on. And then we have to think about like social economic demand behind this like all these production activities. But we have to make clear, all right, because we only have material evidence so far for this social market demand. So what I'm suggesting is that the logic is that reflected from this material records, we see a strong social market, social economic or market demand behind the production of all these bronzes. Okay, so that's the logic that we are deducing with, right? I'm not suggesting in another way, all right, that the strong social economic demand prompting the production of these replicated bronzes, all right, because I don't have, again, enough evidence yet, all right, and this evidence may have come from textual evidence, all right, comes forward with like those like historical sources, all right, but from because I'm an art historian, so I have to start with this material records in order and then deduce that there will be a strong social economic demand behind these production activities. So that's so far what I can do with all these materials available to me. So, and I think definitely there will be a strong demand, market demand. Otherwise, I mean, all of these minerals wouldn't be distributed all the way to the Altai Mountain region, to Caspian Sea. But the Japanese mirrors will be an interesting case as well, all right, because there are lots of possibilities again, all right. So maybe 30 years, 40 years ago, there's a famous archaeologist called Wang Zhongshu, all right. He was already suggesting that, all right, different possibilities. These mirrors, all right, made in China and then like transported to Japan, or the copper may be produced in China and then transported to Japan, or only the artisans, all right, trained in China and then they migrated to Japan, all right. There are different possibilities because this production activity involve the mineral resources, the land, all right, facilities, the furnaces, all right, the building of furnaces, and then the copper, tin, lead, this alloy, all right, and then also the artisan, the people, all right. There are lots of different industrial elements involved in this production. So I think that may make the case much more complicated. Yes.
Last one, and then we have some more. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go.
Hi. Yeah. Thanks for your presentation. I was wondering if you could maybe give a sense of the scale of this in more concrete terms, in terms of for like a given chip or modular variation thereof, how many objects can we assume were made, and then how many workshops were involved? And then perhaps after a given date, like 300 BCE, can we assume that a mirror was likely made by this production system?
Yes. Wow, thank you, Kathleen. The scale is hard to estimate again. Yes, because a lot of these mirrors have been like destroyed. And then I think I am one of the few like scholars who initiated the project of looking for identical mirrors. All right, so looking for identical mirrors, all right, this project is still ongoing, and we are only the starters. All right, we just only like started maybe like 10 years ago. All right, so in terms of the scale, all right, it's very, very hard to estimate. But so far, for my book, all right, I've located about like 16 groups of identical mirrors, and each group will be having like at least 5 mirrors, identical mirrors within that particular group. So I could only look for like 16, all right, because my memory is limited. So with AI, with pattern recognition, image detection, all right, maybe they can help us find out more, all right. So I think we may have to rely on the power of technology in the future, because my memory is limited, but I could only find like 16. But if we have that question in mind, and then whether there are any identical mirrors in the world, and then we'll look for them, and then more and more. But let me tell you the difficulty of looking for these identical objects, like throughout 20th century, right? Why we can identify it, right? The earliest identical three-dimensional bronze sculptures or bronze objects existing in China, all right? They spent an entire century, like 100 years, to look for only 3 or 4 bronze animals, all right? And then they could find it, all right? My teachers and also some other teachers, all right? They spend lots of years looking for only like 3 to 4 identical bronze animals, and they could prove it, all right? They produced in 500 BCE. And then with that question in mind, and I look for them, and I found bronze bells. Some of the bronze bells will be sharing the same model, right? But if we don't look for them, we can't find it. So it's hard to estimate the absolute number so far. But let me tell you, like for Warring States mirrors, right, there would be thousands of bronze mirrors produced in around 300 BCE. But it's hard to, again, estimate the absolute number again, because this mirror, they will be excavated in China. They could be also collected privately or publicly in other museums all over the world, mainly in Europe and North America, or in Japan. So it's hard to like really like summarize them. I can ensure that there will be thousands of mirrors, right? Although if they are, whether they are identical, how many of them are identical, how many identical groups, we don't know yet. I think that's why I'm saying that it's still an ongoing project. And then the second question is,
I was wondering if this then production is,
oh, production size?
yeah, or is how widespread it is. This be if we encounter a mirror maybe after some sort of date, we can assume that maybe likely it was part of this modular system.
Okay, you mean the actual production size?
Yeah.
All right, for actual production size, mainly for mirrors, there's very few, right? There's one in Linzhi in Shandong province, right? Which is just next to Japan, all right? The Shandong province, right? In the site called the Linzhi, all right? We found a big mirror foundry, right? But that big mirror foundry, they're mostly casting Han Dynasty mirrors, right? Warring States mirror, there are few. So that would be the beginning, marking the beginning of that. But only one mirror foundry, all right, doesn't suggest all the other things, all right? Because I'm also arguing that mirror foundry, we can find it, is lucky, all right? But if we don't find, we can still look for evidence from the existing bronze mirrors, right? Because the mirrors themselves would still be telling us lots of interesting stories. But if we don't pay attention to the mirrors themselves, and then we only look for the foundry, all right? And because of foundry, they are usually chance finds, all right? So if we don't find this like foundries, and then it's hard to estimate, and that's not good scholarship. So that's why I'm just like suggesting in this way. But unfortunately, like mirror foundries dating to 300 BC are very few. But if you are talking about other bronze foundries, they will be a lot, all right? So for example, if you are talking about bronze vessels and Shang Dynasty, Anyang would be a big mirror foundry. And then in the Yangtze River area, all right, this is called the middle Yangtze River area, incorporating Hubei and Hunan, all right, the middle Yangtze area, we did find also bronze foundries, all right, bronze foundry sites. But how many of them are producing specifically mirrors? I don't know, because yeah, they are also chance finds, and yeah, yes.
Yeah, I just want to throw in a new concept, and that is not a new concept, but an extra layer of thinking. That is, we think about demand, but it's also that there was an oversupply, just like what's happening now. It became so efficient that they oversupplied, right? There's an overproduction. So maybe that's one way of thinking, how come there's so many thousands of mirrors sitting around?
Yeah, that's an interesting kind of like a question or like a or concept, oversupply. The case for these mirrors in 300 BC is that they don't suggest oversupply, because a lot of them or most of them are found in tombs, all right, graveyards. So if they end up in graveyard, that means they have an owner, all right, and the owners like them. Right, the owners definitely like them, and then put them into their graveyards. All right, so they would be the consumers. All right, consuming all of these mirrors we know so far. All right, all the mirrors are available to us. All the mirrors we know so far, they will be consumed by the tomb owners already. All right, but we, of course, we cannot rule out possibility of oversupply, because there will be lots of other mirrors produced, but 2,000 years, all right, they will be melted down, all right, becomes other bronze, all right, or buried somewhere we don't know yet, all right, or we just kind of didn't estimate the entire number yet. But if there's any big infrastructure manufacturing projects like ongoing in mainland China as they are doing nowadays, all right, you will find lots of mirrors. So about like 100 years ago, Bernard Calgren, all right, the famous like a bronze scholar and also linguist, famous sinologist and also paleographer, all right, Bernard Calgren, all right, he went to like the the Huaihai area or the Huaihe area, and along with another Swedish engineer called Calgren, all right, so Kalbeck and Calgren, all right, Kalbeck, all right, over Kalbeck and Calgren, all right, they found lots of these mirrors from that region because the Jinghuai Railway is being built, the Beijing and then the Huaihe Railway is being built. So with this big project, all right, they found lots of these mirrors and then shipped them back to Sweden. I store now in Sweden, and I haven't been to Sweden yet, so I couldn't access the mirror collection. But that's a huge mirror collection. I'm sure there will be lots of interesting finds inside that mirror collection in Sweden, in the Far Eastern Antiquities Museum. But I haven't been there yet. But I already, all right, by comparing the two-dimensional photographs of these mirrors, I already found some mirrors who have been identical, looking very, very similar or even identical towards the mirror that archaeologists newly excavated in the Huaihe area. One in Sweden, and then one in newly excavated in Anhui Huaihe area. They must be somehow related. And then Calgren and Kalbeck, those mirrors brought back to Sweden by Calgren and Kalbeck, all right? Although they are only like privately traded, privately exchanged items, they should have come from the Huaihe area. They are not telling the lies, all right? They are telling the truth that they bought it from the Huaihe area. So oversupply, yes, that's interesting. Yeah.
Okay, so
yes.
certainly we have some questions from Professor Chen online. So this will be last questions because we really don't have much time. So it says, thank you for the interesting work and presentation. Sammy, can you find written documents on production procedures and processes of bronze mirror or any bronze products from the Eastern Zhou period besides mirror objects? This is the first question. And then for the same time period or earlier periods, did other regions, especially in the Northwest and the North, have similar industrial scale bronze production capabilities? He is wondering whether it was just the Changsha region having developed such capabilities or other regions developed such processes first that were later spread to Changsha. What evidence is there to support any claim?
Well, thank you for these two questions, all right? And then to address the second question, the Northwest and the North, all right, definitely, yes. There will be like also gigantic scale of production activities in the North and also the Northwest. Is this slide on display to the Zoom? So, these mirrors that I'm showing here, they are from Shanxi, Shanxi, and Sichuan. All right. So, yes, all right. So, this one from Sichuan only, this one from Shanxi, all right, and then this one, all right, from Shanxi, and then Shaanxi, all right. So, these are the mirrors that I would find dating to 500 BCE, and they would be also testifying to some of the scale of like industrial production of mirrors, all right, in 500 BCE in the north. But I didn't show in my presentation today. There will be also bronze animals, and then bronze bells. I touch upon them slightly, all right. Bronze bells that I didn't have time to like talk about them today. But these bronze animals and bronze bells, we can also use similar methods to compare them, superimpose them, and then deduce the production power behind these bronzes. And I can assure you that it's not only Changsha exhibiting such an industrial capacity, it's everywhere in China, in Shanxi and Shanxi, and in Henan, in Shandong, right? They are doing these things all together almost simultaneously. And Sichuan as well, all right? And of course, some of these processes may be shipped, may be transported to there, but we can also prove that there will be like active and frequent exchanges between these different regions. So strong power, and then strong production power, and then strong transportation power. Wow. That's no different from today's China. Foxconn in Henan province, all right? Right? Hundreds of thousands of people within one single factory. And I'm saying that, right? Absolute scale, all right? We cannot do an absolute scale, all right? 4,000 CE, those people will be laughing at us, all right? Being too primitive, too backward, all right? So absolute scale, I'm not suggesting that, but I'm suggesting that to measure industrial production, all right? Pursuit of efficiency, pursuit of speed, power, all right, and the principles of mass production as suggested by Henry Ford, all right, these are all could be applied to the production of mirrors. And this is actually happening in the north and also in the northwest. Of course, some could be like transported over there. So I think, yeah, that would be the production power is everywhere in China. And that's why I'm saying that the industrial powers in China laying the foundation and also laying the exchange network, not just the power, also the exchange network. If you have the power, you don't have the exchange network, you cannot ship your like a goods out of Sichuan, out of Shanxi, or out of Changsha. It's no use. You have to build up all this kind of like transportation goods. And for this, we did have some textual records suggesting how they ship the goods, right? But it's not about bronzes, all right? It's about some other materials in the Chu state. So there's a 二军起节, all right? The 二军起 bronze tallies, right? Suggesting the shipment and also the transportation of goods along the water, like the waterways. So for bronze production, textual records, we have very, very few. Unfortunately, again, very few. We may have some, but they are not reliable. All right, we have the 周礼考功记, all right, but 周礼考功记,
just the ideal.
yes, yes, as Professor Su just suggests, it's just ideal. And a lot of them are not reliable, all right? But I can ensure that they also have some knowledge, all right? They also have some basic knowledge of how bronze should be produced, especially because I'm now working on bronze bells. They did have some knowledge of how the basic alloy composition of casting a bronze bell should work. They did have some knowledge, all right? And then this like the metallurgical composition analysis did testify to this like a certain ratio, but there's lots of different possibilities again, all right? So they did have knowledge, but somehow they are not 100% correct. And then they are relying on their partial knowledge and then build up their political framework, political narrative in 周礼考功记, right? That's the few textual records we have so far, right? So, but for bronze mirror production, right, we have none. And then on bronze mirrors, we have almost no inscription from the mirrors at this period. To the Han Dynasty, there are more inscription, textual records from the mirrors, right? But there's Han Dynasty. But Warren says, right, almost none, all right? Maybe you found 2 characters on the bronze mirror, 千金, 1,000 gold, 1,000 taels of gold, all right? But that's it. But whether that's a 千金, what does it mean, all right? Very valuable, or is very heavy, or what, all right? But that's it, all right? But that's the very, very few, all right? So for textual records, production, inscription, we have almost none. All right, so again, so that's the kind of like the limitation of this bronze mirror study.
Thank you very much for your answers. Very
Thank you.
inspiring. We also have one more question from Ken online, but maybe Dr. Lee, you can answer him afterward, maybe by email.
Okay,
And we'll send you the questions and then you can answer him.
sure.
So maybe we can end the session today.
Okay.
And
well,
thank you
yeah,
everyone for
uh-huh.
coming. I will see you next.
Thank you, Ingo.